panel now. Vanessa, would you like to introduce the panel or have them introduce themselves?
Well, I'll go ahead. You already introduced yourselves, but if you can, we'll start with Angela. Should I call you Angela Joe or just Angela? Angela? Okay. Angela, introduce yourself, your organization, and just a little bit about what your organization does.
So my name is Angela Joe Touza-Medina, and I'm with the Immigrant Services Network of Austin. And what we are is we are a neutral convener of immigrant service providers that come together to inform policy, coordinate efforts, and assess the needs of the immigrant community. We have, we were founded, well, we weren't founded. We were, this initiative began in 2003 as a part of the immigrant assessment that was born out of a Travis County Research and Planning, where they brought together immigrant service providers. They did an assessment in the community to see what the needs were. And as a result of that, the next year there was a community forum in 2007, and the convening of immigrant service providers resulted in a group of committed organizations to the immigrant community that come together and try to problem solve around immigrant issues. In terms, the other hat I wear is I'm also vice chair of the City of Austin's Commission on Immigrant Affairs. And we exist to inform and speak to City Council on issues pertaining to the immigrant community.
Thank you, Angela. Jacque or Elaine, which one of you want to go next?
I can go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Elaine Mueller-Cantu. I'm the field office director for the San Antonio USCIS office. Our office is the office that handles all the benefit applications for immigrants. We process people for their fingerprints before they become residents of this country, legal permanent residents. We process people for citizenship. We have a great military outreach program. Ms. Jacque Crouse is our community relations officer, and she's the one that reaches out to all the communities in those 78 counties that we serve. We don't have anything to do with the enforcement side of the house. We're strictly benefits, so we're dealing with people who usually have come here to become legal residents or who want to become U.S. citizens.
Jacque, go ahead.
I am the community relations officer for actually District 18. When they broke up INS, they formed U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I know this says Customs, and people confuse that a lot. The Customs moniker goes with the enforcement side. We are U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and everybody does that. But they form different districts. District 18 is headquartered in San Antonio, and it has 4 field offices underneath it. One of them is San Antonio, which has 78 counties. It goes from Corpus Christi, roughly, up to San Angelo, Austin, Waco, down to Bryan College Station, over to Victoria. And then there's another one that is the El Paso office, is kind of the southern half of New Mexico, and the Texas border area over to Midland in that field office that's in the district, and Harlingen is the field office for the Rio Grande Valley, and we also have the Albuquerque office, the northern part of New Mexico. So roughly the district is New Mexico, the border areas of Texas, and it cuts into the central Texas area. We live in San Antonio. It's the headquarters, and Austin is a large part of what we do in San Antonio. In the district, it's a major hub. I think Elaine will be able to give you some figures for how many people naturalize here every year. There are a lot of immigrants here. I do a lot of outreach here. I was here Saturday with the Austin Police Department's Community Relations Department. They were doing an outreach, a home away for new immigrants to the area. And Austin really does, I think, a good job of reaching out to immigrants.
Thank you so much. I introduced myself earlier, but I need to disclose some things. I'm Vanessa Sarria, Executive Director of CAN, and it's going to be hard for me to stay neutral on this. I am the daughter of 2 Argentinians who immigrated to the United States in the 60s, and my husband is also a first generation, his parents from Colombia, and I lived overseas first 10 years of my life, so I know how it feels to be an immigrant and a foreign born in another country. And so I just wanted to disclose that because I have my biases, of course. All right, so let's just start off. As I explained, let's loosen up, people. This is going to be, diversity is a fun topic. Immigration is a fun topic, okay? Because I have seen so much value that people from different countries can bring to a country, a community. And so I want to make sure that we have a lot of positive notes through this. But let's get real and talk first about some of the key issues that you are seeing. And Angela, why don't we start with you? And if you could please just discuss some of the key issues that you've identified through ISNA.
Some of the key issues that we've identified through ISNA are immigration status related issues, workforce issues, housing issues, information issues in the broad sense, information and access to information, and the cultural competency and of the community of the host community, and how able we are as a community to navigate the needs of our new residents and hopefully one day our new citizens.
Okay. Alejandro, we just did introductions. If you could please introduce yourself, your name, and your organization, a little bit about what your organization does.
Better? Okay. My name is Alejandro Caceres. I'm the executive director of the Austin Immigrant Rights Coalition. So what we do is we organize the immigrant community around issues that are directly affecting them, and we try to make sure that whatever decision is being made, then that the folks that are directly affected, in this case it would be immigrants, are at the table trying to help make the decisions and help develop the strategy and the taxes that are going to help their community with the voice of the community.
Okay. So, Jacque, you were at the session this last Saturday, you were saying, with the police department. I'm sure you were able to hear a lot about different issues and things like that. What is your experience in terms of some of the key issues that you're seeing in Texas and New Mexico in your territory?
From my perspective, being with the benefits, it's understanding the system. You even have, I think the less educated immigrants are, the more they need more information. We try to do that. We do outreach. I try to direct people to our website. I try to go teachers, ESL and citizenship teachers, librarians. We try to help them understand the basics so that they can point people in the right direction. It's information on how to navigate the system. And I think that even at the event Saturday, there was a graduate student who had a question about how to navigate the system. I didn't know it, so I went back and asked someone today. They gave me an answer for him. And there was another woman who had a graduate degree and was asking about a family-based immigration issue. So even people who are very educated can get lost in the system and not know exactly what the next step is to take. That's what I see, is that it's hard for them to understand how to move forward.
Elaine, can you build on that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that our agency has come a very long way. We had 2-year backlogs, I think, Jacque, or maybe even longer on citizenship and legal immigration, and now we're down to about, I think, 4 months on the legal immigration and maybe 5 months on citizenship. So we've come a long way in that respect. Our website is phenomenal. Our USCIS.gov website has improved, and I think it was voted one of the top government websites. So we really have done a good job on our website. The community outreach has been phenomenal. Our military outreach programs have been good. The thing, I guess, that I want to make sure that happens, I'm fairly new to this position, and I want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people that come into our office, and part of that is just plain old customer service, good customer service, treating people with respect and getting them an answer that they are looking for. We have an office up here in Austin that we're not fully staffed in it yet, but as soon as we get our other staff member, we will have 2 people on the ground here that can help with the Austin community and the folks above. So I
have a quick question for you. So it seems like, and Alejandro, you're going to be next. I'm going to ask you that question next, but it seems like your organization is going through some kind of a transformation to provide better customer service, or as Angela was saying, be maybe more culturally competent. And so why this transformation? What are some of the key things that needed to change to better serve the population?
I don't know what. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that when it was INS, I think this has been going on since we became
Ever
U.S.
since the
citizenship.
split.
At INS, you know, you had all these issues. You had many things. You had enforcement in many different ways. You had citizenship. You had many issues to deal with. When it became this agency, all we have to deal with is serving customers. And I think that it took a while because most government websites aren't all that great. Ours was not perfect when we first started. They've worked at it very hard. They've tried. We've held focus groups with immigrants all across the country to try to figure out what is it you need from us.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at right there.
Yeah, we've done things like that to try to, because, you know, we can think that we're doing the right thing all we want to, but you have to hear from people. That's what community relations is about, giving out information but listening to people tell you what they need.
Okay.
So.
Alejandro, what are some of the key issues that you see here in the Travis County community for the immigrant population?
I definitely think it's the high rate of deportations that we have coming out of Travis County. I mean, since 2009, I believe the number is 4,280 people have been deported out of Travis County. That is 19 people a week. I think that we've done presentations on, you know, secure communities all around Austin, and I think that in any room that we're standing in, 90% of the people know someone who is in deportation proceedings or is being deported. And I mean, at least from what our organization sees, that's the major issue right now that we stand. You know, we talk about liberal and progressive values, and we're deporting 19 people a week.
Angela, would you like to build on that?
I do think that that's a big issue because that's one of the things that inhibits people from accessing services that they might actually be eligible for. There's a fear. There's a lack of knowledge of how the system works. There's a fear of law enforcement. And I mean, you see that even, so for example, through the Immigrant Services Network of Austin, we have a collaboration. It's called RISE, the Refugee and Immigrant Safety Education Project, where you have APD officers that are going out and partnering with agencies in the community that are immigrant service providers to help raise awareness about what immigrants' rights and responsibilities are in the United States, regardless of status, because community policing is such a big issue and it's so effective. And when you have this trend in Travis County, where the community itself is trying to be welcoming because the city of Austin declared itself a welcoming city September 19th, and at the same time, you have such a high rate of deportations, it's kind of a contradiction. And that, you know, it undermines the efforts that are being made.
Okay. So what happens, you know, this is a very touchy subject, deportation. And, you know, the White House had its ideas, or it basically talked about immigration reform, and the 4 points that they brought up were, you know, strengthen the borders, crack down on employers who hire undocumented workers, create a path to earn citizenship, streamline the legal immigration system. So it seems that that is the route that they're saying we need to take in order to get to the point of maybe we're not having to deport so many people, that people are given a chance to do it the right way. Alejandro, what do you think that that's the right way to go on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anyone's saying that reform is a bad idea. I agree it is a good idea. We do need to reform a system that is broken to folks. But then we also need to address the fact that, like, the political strategy on getting reform is broken. It's a failed strategy. We're getting close to 2 million deportations since Barack Obama's taken office. It's a failed strategy, and it comes at the expense of our community. So we can't. I mean, we have to look at what is it at a larger fix, which is comprehensive immigration reform. But then there's individual things. I mean, smaller particular things that, like, we have to address. We have to address the deportation issue. Here in Travis County, you know, we can opt out of secure communities. That's just given. I mean, every county that's opted out, every, you know, host state that's opted out has had nothing. The federal government has done nothing against them. So yeah, we do need comprehensive immigration reform, and we need to stop the bleeding. I mean, we need to stop the deportations. We need to stop sorry to throw out numbers, but only 3% of the folks that are deported from Travis County have a violent criminal record. Over 73% of them have no criminal record whatsoever. Like, yes, we need immigration reform, but we also can't take the responsibility that we have to stop the deportation, to stop separating families.
Okay. Yes, Angela.
To speak to that, one of the Commission on Immigrant Affairs, we met with APD, and one of the issues that came up is that people are misinformed. People think that if they get asked for ID, they don't want to show their ID because they're afraid. So, for instance, let's say that there's a routine traffic stop, and in Texas, you can't have a driver's license if you're undocumented. You get stopped, and in the process of stopping, well, they ask, show me your ID. Immigrants, because of the fear, may not show whatever ID they have. It can be a matrícula consular, it can be a passport. Any ID will work, and they will just get a ticket for driving without a driver's license.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're setting. There's a situation through which they are caught in a net, and there's not any information on how to stay within the confines of the law as much as they can, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, Kevin did a presentation earlier. He was talking. I'm not going to ask Jacque and Elaine. I know you're coming from the federal government, so I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that. But Kevin did make a presentation. He was talking about that 8% of the population is unauthorized. Okay. And earlier I had mentioned that I'm introducing this as a happy topic, right? Because I don't want to get honed in on the deportation subject so much that we fail to talk about what the value and what immigrants can do in terms of contributing to our community. So let's talk a little bit about that. Okay. So CAN is all about equity and opportunity. We're trying to get as many people as possible on this opportunity path. So what barriers stand in the way of people achieving that opportunity or reaching their full potential? What I hear you guys saying, it was information, a lack of access to information, not having all the knowledge. Of course, that was a recurring theme. What are some of the assets that we can build on in the population that are immigrants to essentially help them along? Elaine or Jacque, do you guys want to comment on that?
I just want to say one thing, English. Truthfully, for most people who are going to become citizens, you have to have a basic command of the English language, and it's really difficult. Elaine just became field office director about a month and a half ago, and the guy that was there before her used to say immigrants are not stupid, they're smart. They understand the civics part. They know it backwards and forwards. It's the English language that stops more people from becoming citizens or moving forward. And citizenship has value. You can bring more of your family over. You can vote. You can hold a government job. Things you can't do without citizenship. But to get there, you have to have some English ESL classes in English. And I am happy to say that in Austin Community College provides those free. There are a lot of other classes, and there are a lot of places where they're not free. They cost a lot. So, but if more people could get
more
help
English.
with the language,
Okay, more information, more English. Elaine?
I was going to mention something else too, because when we go to community groups, a lot of the people know English and they know enough English to pass the test, but they're so fearful when they come into our office that's the barrier, I think. So one of the things that Jackie's group does sometimes is they do mock interviews. We'll go out to a English as a second language group and actually have an officer who sits down with maybe another officer or maybe the teacher and goes through a citizenship interview. So those are good things. Another thing that we'd like to do more of, and we can certainly host this for schools in Austin, have the class come into our office. We'll take them around to the interview rooms and say hello to some of the officers and just kind of ease that fear, because I think that is one of the biggest things that we see. Even though someone might know enough English, they're just so fearful that they either lose it or they tighten up.
Yes. Alejandro, so what is, in terms of the folks that you're working with through your organization, what are the pathways that you help people get on in order to get citizenship or assimilate into the community? What services are available?
I mean, we help with other organizations, like do citizenship drives and things like that. But the fact is that most of the folks in the Austin Immigrant Rights Coalition are undocumented. I think that there's like, counting myself, there's like 2-3 residents and maybe 1 citizen, 2 citizens. So most of our folks are undocumented, and I do think that, like, to talk on this, I mean, we do try to provide like English classes to folks, or we do try to send people to English classes where they're at. We ourselves don't provide English classes because, again, we don't provide services, more of an empowerment for the community members and building leadership. So that's what we do. We do provide folks, and we do like citizenship drives. We help the students at ULI do DACA drives to make sure that the folks. I mean, I think it's like 50% of the students who qualify for DACA here in Travis County haven't applied. And again, it comes to like the whole fear thing of like not knowing if you could. Actually, just got a phone call from someone who applied, they sent their DACA application, and now they are terrified that the government has all of their information and that they can find them at any point and deport them. I know that we don't want, you say you don't want to concentrate on deportation, but I mean, it's such a real reality to folks is that even when they're applying for something, for whether it's citizenship or residency, and they get denied, then it becomes a fear of like, oh shoot, I might get deported now. Like they have all my information.
So it's not that I don't want to focus on deportation. I just think it's one of several issues. So let's take immigrants who are citizens, who are now citizens. Like my parents, took them a couple decades, but they got there. Do they continue having challenges? What are their challenges? Angela?
I think some of the challenges that come to my mind, and off the top of my head in terms of the challenges that immigrants face in Travis County, for instance, housing is a challenge. Housing in Austin, we all know, is very expensive, and it's getting more and more expensive. And overcrowding and living in conditions where property managers are not the most, let me think of a nice way of saying it, on the up and up, is not infrequent with our immigrant community. And that same fear that we're bearing upon inhibits them from reporting violations that might be safety concerns and public hazards to public health, because there's that fear of retaliation. I mean, it even happens with victims of domestic violence who aren't aware of the of how the legal system actually protects them. So they're afraid of reporting domestic violence.
Okay. So you mentioned housing issues and accessing legal issues because of their concerns. Now, what about you had given a report on some immigrant challenges, and you mentioned other things such as challenges in regards to health care and education. Can you comment on those?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that Jacque mentioned is that we're lucky to have ESL classes for free in Austin. But the fact is that we still have very few ESL classes for the population that we need to serve. And we're expecting immigrants to attain a level of ESL that is highly elevated without providing the means for basic ESL education. Schools with high numbers of limited English speakers are generally schools that are in underprivileged areas. We have the graduation rates for LEP students, limited English proficiency students, are low compared to those of native-born citizens.
Can I comment, though, a little bit on that? I've heard that those kids who are dual language learners in their very early years tend to, something happens to their brains, where their brains are exercised quite a bit, where they tend to sometimes supersede the test scores of average students. Elaine, you're shaking your head?
Just because I've heard the same thing. Not that I have any knowledge about that, other than when we run into some of these kids that are in valedictorians and salutatorians in their high schools. They speak 2 languages. They're bilingual, and they've been here since they were little. So I totally agree with that statement. Yes.
Yeah, you see, and this is where I want to really hone in on the assets to the community. So Alejandro, or anyone, what is the value of having what is the value to our economy of having a multilingual population? That's a big one.
Well, if I could, so I'm going to quote my mother on this one. My mother, when we were children, she insisted on the fact that we learn as many languages as possible because she said the more languages you know, or rather, you're worth as many people as languages you speak. And with Austin becoming an increasingly global community, I mean, just see South by Southwest, where we have the world in downtown Austin. The greater linguistic capacity we have, the greater ability we have to navigate different cultures, the more prosperous we're going to be. Especially if we're trying to launch ourselves out into the world, not just as the live music capital of the world, but as a center for technology and business growth.
So Jacque and Elaine, do you see the federal government honing in on that? Do you see more of a positive rhetoric in that sense, in terms of how the immigrant population can contribute to the economy? What's your? I mean,
I don't know that I have a thought in general on that. I know that we hire speakers. We have people from all over the world. We have a huge number of our staff are Spanish speakers. We have Vietnamese speakers. We have people from different areas of Africa that work for us. We have people from all over the world who work for us because we need those language skills to interview people. And
yay!
So
exactly.
I'm sure economically it has worked out for those people because I mean they became citizens and they were able to get. And some of them have moved to the top levels of different agencies. I mean, it's not. I mean, the more knowledge you have, I am never going to say that's going to hurt you. So.
Thank you, Alejandro. You have anything to contribute to that? When you work with some of the folks that you're working with, when they're able to gain that dual language competency, what happens? How does that change them?
I mean, I don't think that like anyone's going to say that knowing multiple languages is a bad thing. I mean, I think it's good. I think that, as the more languages, the better. I mean, I think that that's good. I mean, folks, I mean, when you speak and you have a command of the English language, that's very good. And again, if you were undocumented, however, you can speak both the languages, but it's not going to matter because the jobs aren't there for you. I mean, we keep talking about bringing in a lot of work and bringing in making Austin an international city, and that's true if you have documents and if you're able to, because Austin is getting very, very expensive, so if you're able to get housing, then the issues that affect immigrants isn't just an immigrant issue, but it's low income issues and people of color issues. It's just something that's very broad. And yes, having another language is great. Being able to speak multiple languages is great. But if you can't use that skill, then what good is it?
That's a really good. Just real quick, Angela, you want to build on that, and I want to go back to him. Go ahead.
To build to what you were saying, the fact is that there are lots of highly qualified immigrants that come into Central Texas. The problem is that validating certifications and licensing is an expensive, time-consuming, and arduous process. It's very hard to find information out there. So that inhibits part of that value added that immigrants can bring because sometimes they're too busy surviving.
Gotcha. So back to Alejandro, you were talking about the issues of immigrants in our community are parallel to low-income populations and people of color. What are some of those issues? And Angela had mentioned educational attainment issues, and she had mentioned housing issues. What are some other ones?
I mean, I think those are two huge ones, education and housing. I mean, I think that's great. That's a great place to start. But there's also, our relationship with local police enforcement. There's definitely a mistrust between the communities of not only of color but immigrant communities and APD or the sheriff's department. And for whatever reason that is, not for whatever reason. I mean, there's multiple reasons why that is, but that's an issue that isn't just an immigrant issue, but it's a broader, folks of color, low income issue. There's that. There's I think the educational issue is a big deal. I think that, when I used to work at Webb Middle School and we had kids who were put into special ed because they didn't speak English. That's an issue. You're already affecting that child so much, telling them, hey, you're not like the other kids because you don't speak the dominant English language. That's a little problematic to have. I think education was just huge especially for the kids who who were born here or first generation, like immigrants, their parents are immigrants, they were born here. When they go through the educational process, it's through the educational system, it's very hard when they're given things in English and their parents are like, I'm not going to sign that because I don't know what that is. I can't read that. And then it becomes problematic of like the family is seen as the family who doesn't speak English. And like if the kid only speaks Spanish, then they're put into like a special program because they must not learn fast enough because, and I've had this happen with my nephews who some of them were Spanish speakers. Some of my nieces were Spanish speakers first, and their teachers just be like, okay, you're not learning fast enough, so we're going to hold you back a grade. Well, yeah, we're not learning fast enough because the language you're giving us isn't the language that we speak.
So you mentioned a couple of cultural competency challenges, and that's communicating in the languages of the people we serve, understanding there's a difference between comprehension and not speaking the English language in a way that others can understand. But a couple of other things that we haven't mentioned is healthcare. We've talked a lot about education. Some of the big issues that I saw here in your report, and I'm glad you were talking about the implications on health, whether it's a language barrier or other. What are some of those issues?
Well, immigrants are more likely to lack health insurance. They're more likely to access the health services through the safety net. And in many cases, let's say, for instance, if they're undocumented, they aren't really eligible for any benefits. So it places them in a difficult situation. That's one of the reasons that as assimilation goes on with many immigrants, their health declines because they don't have the access to services that they might have otherwise. Some other things that were interesting to me is that in terms of another reason why many immigrants don't have health insurance is because they are not engaged in employment that provides that as a benefit.
So is the U.S. is the federal government trying to, through you guys, are they trying to do anything in terms of helping those people who are citizens, who are foreign-born citizens? Are they trying to encourage them to apply to the ACA? Is there any kind of collaboration going on with the uninsured? No, not at this time.
Not with us. No.
Okay. All right. So the question, Alejandro, yes.
I'm
yes.
sorry. I was just going to
Elaine,
mention
yes.
When it comes to, it's not really about what you're saying other than there are some of our laws allow us to give certain waivers to people with certain health conditions. The medical waivers for, let's say, naturalization and not having to take the test, the English test. There's also some waivers for people who are elderly, who have been in this country long periods of time. They can be waived the English and citizenship test. So there are different things that our agency actually has in place that are statutory that we go through.
Thanks for
So
bringing
I just
that
want
up.
to bring that up as when we're talking about healthcare.
Alejandro, I know that you wanted to build on Angela's point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this might just be in general, not really the immigrant population, but I think Latinos have a very low enrollment in the Affordable Health Care Act. I think the Southwest Keys is doing amazing work in trying to enroll more Latino immigrants who maybe just think that because of their status, whether it's residency or because they became a U.S. citizen, aren't enrolling in this. And I'm guilty of that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's something. And I think that you brought up something very interesting of if we're talking about what's affecting immigrants, and wage theft, that's something that's also very big here. Mm-hmm. To put it that way, it's very big here, very popular. But that's something that happens. I mean, there's a lot of wage theft that happens to the immigrant community, whether they're undocumented or not, because, and again, we go back to this essential fear of hey, if you report me, I'm going to have you deported. And at that point, how do you argue against that? You don't. You just walk away and you're okay, I'd rather not get paid than get deported.
So you make a really good point that you're talking about whether you are undocumented or documented. This issue of wage theft happens with both of those populations, and I think all of the issues you're bringing up, what I'm hearing, whether it's education, whether it's accessing information, housing, it doesn't matter whether you're undocumented or documented. The immigrant population has challenges and fears and doesn't understand the system. Is that what I'm hearing you say? It's both.
Yeah.
So, because I think we make such a big deal about the undocumented population, we forget the large numbers of foreign-born that we have. We need to change the way, and I keep saying this, we need to change the way we do business to welcome this population, it's my population, and to value the assets that they bring to the community, the contributions. I think that I'd like to talk about it. I think that there is a hyper focus on the undocumented, and we kind of forget that the whole foreign-born population has needs.
I think that it's an acculturation issue. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, local refugee resettlement agencies are required by law to provide refugees refugee cultural orientation, whereby we're supposed to orient them to the community. And regardless of the status of an immigrant, they all need to be oriented the same way because they have the same informational needs to a certain extent. They all need to understand how the public transportation system works. They all need to understand how to read their utility bills. And I can commend the city of Austin's welcoming program, because they started their welcoming last year, where they go out to the community and they hold these sessions. And that's one of the things that you were at yesterday, Jacque, to kind of have the community come and learn about.
Yes, Jacque.
I would say that years ago, when we first started as an agency, we came out with a booklet saying "Welcome to the United States." We kind of recognized that need. That booklet is still available, but it's expensive and it doesn't get out as often. And plus, you need somebody to go through it with people. It tells you, here's how you rent a place. Here's what a PTA is in the United States of America. I had no clue until I spoke. You go to speak to these groups and you figured out that in a lot of countries, libraries are for the elite. You can't go in unless you pay for it, and you can't even go in unless you're a certain level of, you just don't walk into a library. And it's like, no, you can go to any library you want to here and get information. Things like that, and you have to explain to people what's available here, what's not. I think that, and it doesn't matter whether you're. I spoke to a group of people who are studying for citizenship about a week and a half ago, and I think that sometimes we overestimate the level of sophistication. These are people who work very hard. They're supporting families, and they were asking me questions that indicated they really didn't understand certain pathways that they could take, certain things they could do. It's just that a lot of immigrants work very hard, and they don't have time, I think, to learn those. And you kind of have to hold their hand through things sometimes and give them that information.
So what? Okay, I've been hearing two things. Our community is doing a great in many respects from the city of Austin, and I'm hearing our community is not doing so great when it comes to deportation issues. Okay, so what needs to change? If we could do things, if we could wave a wand and make things better, what would we need to do? Alejandro, you want to jump in on that one?
Yes to the fact that we do need more programs, but I think that the problem is that when you have a legitimate real fear of being deported, it's really, even if you know the process, even if you know, I think that, to throw out a name here, Workers Defense Project does a really good job of informing people of what their rights are. But even as you know your rights, the threat of deportation is a serious, legitimate threat that you don't want to mess with. It's a violent process of being removed from your family and your home and things that it's a violent process, and that's something most folks don't want to go through. And I think that we can talk about how we make education better and how we make housing better and how we make work better. But if we don't remove that legitimate fear of deportation, then it's going to be really hard to get folks involved. It's really hard to it's going to be really hard, even if they know the process. It's going to be hard for people to step in. And of course, I'm talking about the undocumented community right now. But it's going to be really hard for anyone to step up and want to participate in a society and a community that, as at one point telling them, welcoming, because Austin is welcoming them, and on the other hand is deporting, has the third highest deportation rate in the entire nation. That's a little bit, that's a little problematic. You don't want to step into that crowd if the threat is deportation.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you want to build on that.
I think that I agree. I agree that secure communities is something that has to be addressed and dealt with. I also think that, yes, Austin is doing good things. However, we could be doing things much better. So to this, some things that immediately come to mind is, for instance, when the city of Austin declared itself a welcoming city, the immigrant community and immigrant service providers weren't really engaged in the process of defining what the welcoming vision for the city of Austin is for its new immigrant residents. So one of the things that we as the Commission on Immigrant Affairs have put forth is we put forth a recommendation for the city council to order is not the right word, but to work with the Commission on Immigrant Affairs and the Health and Human Services Department and the Economic Development Department to put together a welcoming initiative conference where we would bring in immigrant service providers, bring in the community, and have a serious conversation about what welcoming means to Austin. Another thing that we worked on is we put a recommendation forth for the procurement process for the RFA for Health and Human Services that recently came out to state that, to recommend that there be provisions that include services to immigrants, that include on the matrix for scoring proposals, how culturally competent is your organization? How do you build capacity internally to deal with individuals that have barriers that are based on their background, and when they aren't English and Spanish, when they're neither English nor Spanish speaking, because we have a large community of immigrants that's growing that doesn't speak Spanish either.
I wanted to ask about that. When Kevin presented his numbers, he was showing a large portion of Asian population, and it's growing. It has the fastest growth rate. The Hispanics have the highest numbers, but they have the fastest growth rate. So, Jacque and Elaine, I'm sure that you're seeing this trend happening all over New Mexico and Texas in your territory. What are ways that you guys are responding to the diversification among the Asian population, or are you trying to do things in some different ways?
We reach out to whatever community that asks us. One thing is Austin, frankly, of the whole district, Austin and Albuquerque, strangely enough, have got really diverse populations, but Austin more so than anyone. We've been up here and done a Chinese outreach. When I went Saturday, I had another guy, and we have a Mandarin speaker. One of our supervisors is from Taiwan. She speaks Mandarin, and he asked me if we could do another outreach with the Chinese Society here. I said, we can talk about that. We have a Mandarin speaker. There's an event that we've been doing probably for at least 7 or 8 years at an elementary school on the north side. I think it's Mountain Laurel. It's an Ellis Island Day, and we go do that event. That school, at the time we first went, I was talking to the principal or someone. It was 48% of the parents were foreign-born. Very few Hispanic. It was almost all Asian, and that was the level of questions you got from those kids sometimes too indicated the kind of high-tech home. I went the next year with another adjudicator, and she kept looking at me, and afterwards she said, "Are these fifth graders?" I said, "Yes." And there are different things that they want to know. I get asked questions. It's a different sort of question, but they're all about the process, about what you can do, can't do. Well, it's easier to reach out to that population in some ways because most of them can speak English, or to a degree can speak English. Their questions are more clear cut.
So one thing that you mentioned that we brought up in the safety net earlier, Alejandro was saying the issues of immigrants are similar to low income and so on. One of the issues that we were bringing up is the need for us to change the way to become more culturally competent as a safety net. And one of those things is aligning your leadership and your workforce to the populations you serve. And it's very evident from what you have been explaining that you've already been doing that. You hire people from diverse backgrounds so that you can serve people who are diverse, and that seems to me like one of the strategies that you guys are using to adapt. And that's what I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that we're trying to encourage also in this community, is adapting to that. Alejandro, you're shaking your head.
No, I'm just agreeing. I think that specifically that, I think that's really important, and, having community folks. And because it's true, Austin does have has a really fast, Asian immigrant population growing. And, though that comes with a whole bunch, a different background than, Latino immigrants. So it's important to have those folks on the table, and it's important to, when we're going to make a decision, we're going to make this a welcoming city, to bring them on the table, what is a welcoming city for you? Yeah, instead of like, what do we consider welcoming city? Like, what's a welcoming city to you? So I'm just agreeing and nodding in agreement.
It's a big challenge. I mean, the reason I'm asking you, what are you doing, is because as a community, we're trying to figure out how to adapt to these demographic shifts. And aligning our leadership and workforce to the needs of the population is a challenge, but is one that we need to embrace and figure out how we're going to do this. What are some other challenges that come along with, especially in the Asian community, where there is just so much diversity in language and in religions and food and so many different things? What are some ways that you've had to adapt to better understand and meet the needs of those populations? And back to Jacque and Elaine, how do you find the resources to do those specialized, Chinese trainings? Or go ahead. Mm-hmm.
One thing we have is we don't have that in every local office, but we were lucky we have a Mandarin speaker. We do have we have something called the Office of Public Engagement at our headquarters office, and they, I kind of loosely report up that chain of command. They work to reach out to different groups. They meet with national boards, national organizations, and something they started in the past 3 or 4 years are different language webinars, and they're open to the public. They're open to anyone, and then they have these. They do them in Spanish. First of all, the first year was Spanish. Now they've branched out. They've done them in Chinese. They've done them they just did one in Vietnamese. What is the next language? I think they've done Creole. They're doing different languages, and they're trying to get people to get the information out. They have a panel of people. They take questions on the phone. People can call in with their questions to find out, and they're doing those with more regularity, at least one a month. They're trying to reach out in that way, because actually every local office, it'd be difficult to have somebody to do everything. Something I find difficult sometimes in certain Asian communities are that they're more closed than they talk about not coming outside the community. It's sometimes we've been invited to a few Vietnamese and Chinese things here lately in Austin, and I'm thrilled because it's very difficult to break that barrier. But once you go and you just give them information, it's like doing it once or twice and breaking that barrier, and then they see that you're going to come, you're going to give information, then they don't feel so strange with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've done a much better job over the years in reaching out to the different groups, and I don't know if any of you have ever been to a naturalization ceremony, but you'll see between 78 and 100 countries represented at those ceremonies. So it's quite awesome if you have the chance to go to the next one in Austin. And I don't know if it's at the Delco Center at the LBJ Auditorium, but it's pretty amazing when you see the people raise their hand to swear to the United States. It's really, there's 105 countries represented here. It's incredible. So we've done a much better job in reaching out to the diverse groups.
Do you use language access lines? If you don't have the workforce, what do you do?
Yes, we do. If someone's exempt the language requirement, let's say on citizenship, or even on an interview for residency for the green card, we have the ability to call some numbers, and our officers can have that interpretation with somebody. I don't know if it's New York or where, but we have a language service for that. Yes, okay. And that's new. We haven't had that before.
So Alejandro and Angela, it's great that your names they sound good together. But what is our community's capacity? I mean, do you think we do a good job of providing services in the languages spoken by populations who don't speak English?
Not really, actually. I think that we are lacking in terms of providing interpretation and translation, particularly in medical settings. Mm-hmm. I feel that often our assessment tools, be it for mental health, be it for behavioral issues in schools, are not culturally competent, because we are evaluating other individuals based on our own ethnocentric view of who they are and who they should be. And I think that in terms of that, we have a ways to go.
Okay. Alejandro, did you want to add to that?
I just second that, all of it.
That was well. I mean, I think the community council. I know it's time, almost 2 minutes, but you've heard some really great examples of how important cultural competency is, and you know that CAN has an agenda to really want to work on getting more organizations culturally competent. And I think you've heard some examples of that. Okay, we have 1 minute left, and I want to end with a good note. We've been talking a lot about challenges and issues and barriers, and I want to just leave with what can a diverse community do for us in terms of being sustainable, economically sustainable in the future. Why is diversity important? Why is it a good thing? Angela.
I keep talking. But I think that diversity is important because basically what we're doing is we're enriching the fabric of who we are. And by enriching the fabric of who we are making ourselves more attractive to individuals and industry on the outside. And at the same time, we are growing. And the diversity and providing channels for that diversity to evolve into economic prosperity is something that, if done right, can have a general positive effect on our community. I mean, if going back to what Kevin presented, if you look at the fact that immigrants are often most represented in lower income groups, think about what that would do if we could raise that up, and how that would, we talk about the drains that lower income groups have on the prosperity of the community as a whole, when in fact I think we need to think about it the other way. If we lift them up, how much higher can the rest of us go as well?
From what I was hearing, that the immigrant population and the low-income population, they work a lot.
Exactly.
So it must be contributing to the economy. So this is just yes, Jacque. Mm-hmm.
Just something that my boss always says, and he's right. At our ceremonies, sometime you'll notice that we have like 3 of the new citizens will speak. And when you start hearing all those stories, you do it very often. Encourage immigrants to tell their stories, because I don't hear one that's not uplifting about what they go through and how hard they work and where they're moving towards. And just, immigrants are the most resourceful and amazing people in the world. And they're very resilient. And I like to encourage communities to encourage them to tell their stories, listen to them, and get them out there, because that will show you the value of immigration.
Yay. Okay, we'll end with that. Thank you very much, Jacque. All right, thanks so much.